Last night I was talking with Brenda and I said, what exactly is this fearless thing that we're doing? And she said, you'll find out. So we're about to find out because the next thing up on our program is the Fearless panel, and I am going to turn it over to Brenda and let her introduce her panelists to us and tell us just exactly what this thing is all about.
All right. And Kathleen is disappointed because he didn't do his calisthenics. All right. Drop this up here this morning. All right, so again, welcome. I am really excited to be here to talk to you about the Fearless Project. I know there's a little bit of information about it in your program if you had an opportunity to read it. Everybody here knows about the huge stigma, of course, that goes with being a registered person, but not only that, on loving or supporting a registered person, advocating on sexual offense laws, and even choosing this if you're a researcher or an educator to talk about it. The Fearless Project comes out of my own growing awareness of the need that we all have, whether we're advocates, registrants, registered families, or concerned professionals, to relate with others who understand the challenges that we face. First, I'd like to give a special shout out to Mary Sue from Texas Voices, who sadly was unable to be with us this year. Texas Voices was the first to really build sustainable support groups for our folks. They now have several going around Texas, and it's my firm belief, although it's not a scientific study by any stretch, that these groups have contributed in many ways to the vibrancy and effectiveness that we've seen. If you've ever been to our previous conferences at Texas, they create a strong core, I think, of volunteers and advocates, and our Fearless Project is growing out from that foundation. Now, before I go on and actually explain a little more of what they are, I do want to pause and introduce our panelists. They create a strong core, I think, of volunteers and advocates, and our Fearless Project is growing out from that foundation. Now, before I go on and actually registered citizens and their families, one's in Los Angeles and the other is in San Diego, and he's been active in the 12-step community for over 10 years, trained as a forensic clinical social worker, and he specializes in sexual addiction and sex offender treatment. In these groups, though, where he's doing the support groups, he only acts as a peer because he's also a registrant, or has been until just recently. Yes. Let's see who's next in line. We got Kathy. Kathy Gourlay is a trained facilitator of restorative justice circles, and she's a peacemaking circles. She's been a leading support and advocacy group for registrants, families, and friends in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Trained for about 6 months now, and Kathy is a part-time community college computer instructor who's worked passionately for criminal justice reform for over 20 years, and she's currently active in the Michigan Collaborative to End Mass Incarceration. And then we have Jeanie Mezger, who's the wife of a registered citizen. She began leading the Nebraskans Unafraid Fearless group, the very first Fearless group that we've had, for about 2 years now. She recognized the need for a support group when she met other wives and realized how valuable it was to simply be with others who share those same concerns. Jeanie also blogs at Handbasket Notes at blogspot.com. Philip Queso is our West Virginia state advocate and a coordinator for RSOL's Region 2, as you might have heard this morning. He was the founding member and a leader of the, and I hope this is really this long, Philip, the Wave Church, Wave City Care Regeneration Support Group. in Virginia Beach.
I didn't create the
You didn't create the name. From 2004 to 2006, and he was also an SAA leader in 2001 and 2002. So these four wonderful people, as well as I think Cindy, Cindy, where are you? Have also, in addition to these four being on the panelists, have also agreed to act as mentors for people who might want to start a group back in their hometowns, in their regions. So now a little bit more about what is a fearless group. And the first question to ask is, why are we needing such a group? We need fearless because we need a safe community that we can turn to help us over the many hurdles that we face, a community where we can share our successes too, and help others find their way past the roadblocks of public registration. Fearless groups can help us to find a path for individual growth, a renewed sense of empowerment, even though it sometimes seems like the whole world would really rather beat us down. And we need fearless groups in order to learn how to become better advocates, not only for ourselves and our personal rights, but for change in our local and state and national laws and policies. So what is a fearless group? It is a regular meeting of neighbors in our quote-unquote registered community, meaning registered citizens, their adult family members, and their close friends who are impacted and concerned by registration. Meetings are generally monthly, but they could be more or less often if the group desires. The fearless groups are an opportunity to build friendships instead of walls, and they're a great place to network with others who truly have walked in your shoes. Above all, fearless groups provide a positive influence for their members and in overcoming obstacles and turning them into opportunities for advocacy and for personal growth. Through presentations at these meetings, discussion among friends, fearless members find hope, they find knowledge, and they find some strength to step out and make change happen. Now for a few things that fearless is not. Fearless can be called a support group, and I sometimes do refer to that because it helps you kind of place them in a category. And there is a strong support component, but that isn't all. Another critical component of fearless groups is education. An opportunity to learn about advocacy or job skills or dealing with difficult neighbors or whatever the group decides it wants to work on. These groups are not about bitching and moaning and preaching to the choir. We share our own stories rather than blasting the government or the justice system. Our focus is on where we are now and how to change our future. These are discussion groups, not therapy groups. You'll find some similarities to groups like AA and restorative justice circles if you're familiar with those, but it's really neither. It's going to be its own thing. Fearless groups are completely private, and they are only for registrants and their loved ones. No state-paid therapists are permitted to be there. No probation and officers, no matter how wonderful you think they are and how best buddies you are. I have had a few people tell me what great probation officers they have. This is to assure the confidentiality and comfort of everybody in the group. The Fearless Project can also be summed up by its manifesto. You've probably seen some of them on the tables. Most of them have been picked up now. There's also, I had intended to put them in the folders. The original version of the manifesto was written by an RSOL leader from Nebraska, and we, with permission, took it and made it gooder, as we sometimes say, and are using that as a part of our Fearless, shall we say it like a ceremony at the beginning. I'm going to be asking our 4 panelists to take turns reading these. If you've got one of those bookmarks, you're welcome to follow along. There's still some on the tables. And you can find cards with that on them out in the lobby as well. So does everybody have the little card they can read, or do I need to pass it around? Okay, all right. So what we'll do is we'll start. We have enough to pass around? Okay, so we'll just each take turns, and then I'll take the last one. So Alex, why don't you begin and read the first?
All right, a fearless manifesto. I will take responsibility for my current situation and future progress.
I refuse
It's
I
there.
refuse to believe that there is nothing I can do. I refuse to complain.
I refuse to be silent in the face of state-sanctioned hatred, in the face of laws designed to destroy me and my family.
I've paid the legally prescribed penalty for my offense and refuse to be broken by an unforgiving system.
If I can't find work, I will become an entrepreneur who hires other registered citizens.
If someone refuses to rent to me, I will educate them and create an opportunity for change.
Whenever possible, I will boycott and educate businesses that would not hire a registered citizen in hopes of change.
I will not be a victim, and I will learn to stand on my own.
I will not let my past dictate my future, nor let a label rob me of my dignity. Who I am today can change hearts and minds tomorrow. That, we're hoping, kind of becomes really the core of the message of what we try to get across to folks in our fearless groups. Here's what a typical fearless meeting would look like. Most are going to run for about 2 hours. They begin right on time, reading through our meeting courtesies and the manifesto. Next comes a presentation by a guest, or perhaps a recording of a recent RSOL webinar, for instance, or some other topic that, again, is of interest to the group that they want to learn about. Following that would be sharing and discussion. It includes a chance for each person to check in, just very briefly, and plus respond either to the presentation or to any concerns or questions that have come up by the group members. All of this dialogue is done using I language. How many people are familiar with the concept of I language? Okay. Talking about yourself rather than about others. So you would come up and say, I have a concern about this, or my situation is that. You would not come up and say, my son has been having trouble with, or, so in other words, it's all, you're telling your story and sharing your experience in this context. And then if you're responding, you would again respond. If somebody else said they're having trouble, you would not come back and say, if somebody else says, I'm having trouble dealing with this particular issue, you could not come back and say, well, you need to be doing such and so. You would say, when I had that problem, so it's all about you sharing your message and your concept. That's just a real brief overview. Finally, at the end of the session, there's a time for connecting one-on-one, just to simply meet and mingle with the others in the room. Share contact information if you want to connect with somebody further. For interested group leaders, we will have a packet. We don't have a lot of them, so we're not handing them out to everybody in the room, that you can use to help create your own group. We'll have it available online, so you can print your own copies of these materials. The packet that we have today to conserve trees has an example of one each of everything that would be in the packet. But you can print as many as you need. It includes a number of items such as the manifesto is there, the rules, the whole structure of the meeting, and a lot of instructions on how you can get a group going. And then again, you'd also, hopefully we would connect you up with one of our mentors. We're offering 3 opportunities to get all of you that wish to have an experience of the sharing and discussion portion of Fearless during the course of the remainder of the conference. We're considering this part to be the education part. You know, we're telling you about Fearless. And then during these breakout sessions, they will all be in the Willow Room, and they should be on your schedule. And I hope that you'll find an opportunity to those of you who are interested in experiencing what a meeting would be like, or if you want to start a meeting, or maybe you actually have a meeting out there that we didn't know about and you want to see how any of this might be used in your meeting. I hope that you'll check that out. They're only an hour, so that's why we're limiting it to that. You can certainly ask questions during the discussion time more about Fearless. This is a really good opportunity for that, and it's also an opportunity for anybody who wants to experience the session. Anyway, it's now time to hear from our panel members, and I'm going to be asking questions of them that I'm hoping are the most common questions that people might have about a Fearless group. And the first one of those has been, what has been the most rewarding part of leading a group for registered citizens and family members? Who would like to go first? I don't know if we want to just go left to right or right to left. We can certainly do that.
Well,
Go ahead,
okay,
Alex.
I can start with that. The most rewarding thing for me was when we were meeting kind of the 3rd or 4th time, and it was people who were coming back. And several of the registrants actually had to go to the state-mandated sex offender treatment, which in California is the containment model, where there is no confidentiality and nothing. So there was pretty much 0 therapeutic value for them and no safety. And our group in Los Angeles, I'm very, very focused on safety, that everybody feels safe, emotionally safe, but also safe from any repercussions. And a very rewarding comment that I got from a member was saying, finally, I am finding a home where I can talk. Finally, I'm home. And so that was deeply moving for me to have created and have provided the opportunity for people on the registry who are struggling with the emotional impact that being on the registry has, the shame and all that, to really openly talk about it. And yeah, that has been one very rewarding thing for me.
Well, our group just started in March, so we haven't met that many times yet. But I like to help other people, and I get satisfaction out of being able to do that. Plus, I learn from them too, since my son is also in the registry. But I too had one of our members who happens to be at this conference said that he felt like he came home when he found our group. He used the same words. So you can't really share this with people that'll understand unless they've gone through it. So it helps to have other people around that have experienced the same thing. And also, when I was first talking to some people on the phone about coming, we hadn't met yet, a registrant said, I had no idea that there were such groups, that anyone cared about us. And that just made me feel so glad and wish there were more groups like this.
At our group, we have had people come in who've been on the registry for years. They're living, okay. We have people that come to our meetings that have been on the registry for years, so they have a lot of experience in dealing with the registry. We have people who hadn't been sentenced yet. We had a guy come who was, I think, in a pretty bad spot, and he came and found us. We have people at every phase. We had people who had someone in prison. But the cool thing is seeing how everybody gets kind of a boost from seeing that they can help someone else. And I think that's the best part of this, is that it's empowering to see that although we're dealing with this terrible situation that's been forced on us, we can take that and turn it into something that we can use to help someone else. We have the guys who come who've been on the registry for a long time. Sometimes they tend to think, well, kind of got it all figured out, and I'll come to help someone else. But they find that the meeting is as helpful for them as it is for the new people. So that's been really cool to see how everybody realizes that in their own way, in their own time.
So for me, rewards, you're going to have rewards at and I haven't started a fearless group at this point. We're still in the planning stages, but from my past experience, you can have rewards at a personal level, personal appreciation and thank you to you from the group members. You're going to have new relationships that are built, and since most of these relationships are formed in a pain kind of environment, some of them may last a lifetime. You'll have the reward of actually seeing the group as well as the individuals do well. But for me, on the largest scale, the most important thing is actually seeing people, helping people be able to help themselves, and watching them grow into someone who's empowered and edified and an advocate for themselves and others, as opposed to seeing themselves as helpless victims.
Great. Thank you all. That's the best part. And now what I want to do is go back, of course, and ask, what is one problem that each of you has had, and how did your group solve that particular problem? I don't know if we want to repeat again, or does anybody want to hop around?
I'll go first.
Okay.
The biggest problem we had was simply getting started. After I had met on the phone one wife, Kathy Garner, that's when I realized exactly how powerful that is, to be with people who understand what you're going through. Then I met another wife, and I could see that we needed something like that in our town. And so I talked to our advocacy group, Nebraskans Unafraid, and I said, we really need a support group. And we all kind of batted the idea around for a long time, and everybody agreed that, yeah, we need that, we need that, we need that. We talked about it for a long time. And then finally somebody said, the Nebraskans Unafraid group, we meet every week. We meet on a Monday morning. And he said, why don't we take one meeting a week, move it to the evening, and there we have our meeting. So we meet at my church, who has been welcoming, very supportive. But that was the hardest part, was simply knowing that this is a good idea, and then finally getting it out there. So just do it. That's the thing. Just do it.
Okay, Nike.
All right.
For me, the biggest problem I've faced in the past was actually the death of the leader of the group, the support group that we had. But we were able to take that challenge, and we were actually able to groom a new leader from within the organization, from within the membership. It helped edify the group because they felt like they were, directly responsible for who was leading, who was going to help them and mentor them going forward. And we took that opportunity to take a deep dive into how pain and grief continues to play into the trigger factors that many people have, and how you can actually go into that and be able to come up with constructive ways to handle grief and pain.
Well, we're blessed in Los Angeles that we can use a safe space that is provided by the ACLU. However, that room costs us $275 every meeting. So yeah, that's pretty steep, but there is a guard there, and there is a secure entrance and all that. And the board was graciously offering us to do that. However, finding a space can be tricky, because as soon as somebody hears about what the group and the meeting is about, it's like, oh well, tons of excuses why we cannot meet there. And also we have to watch out that we are not violating anybody's probation, because if we meet in a church and there is a school affiliated with that church, oops. So that can be a challenge. We also had a challenge then of disseminating the information. We once found a private room that a therapist was able to provide for us, and we disseminated the information on the website, and some trolls on Facebook got load of it and were saying, oh, well, there is a bunch of perverts meeting and maybe we should pay them a visit. Well, I canceled that meeting, and we went back to the ACLU. So we have to find different ways of doing, disseminating the information and all that. As far as the groups directly goes, one confusion that I had was that people were coming and hoping for legal advice. And we have to nip that in the bud right away to say, no, this, and make it really clear that this is a emotional support group. This is not a legal support group. That's what, for us, the RSOL or RSOL groups are for, that Janice leads. That's where all that is. We are here for that. But once we got over that hump, and in the second and third meeting, then it was clear. But it is very important to make that clear from the very get-go, that this is not about the legal aspects and how to handle illegal aspects. This is about how do you deal with it emotionally? How is this impacting you when that probation officer is doing this, that, and the other to you? Not what can you do legally against him, but how do you deal with it, and how can you actually get this probation officer off your back? And what do you do for it? And that's when the I statements are coming in.
Yeah.
That's when, and that's the other thing, where there's a lot of advice giving that that comes very quickly. And then as a group leader, it's really important to bring it back and say, well, how did you personally handle this? And that's another thing. But over time, there's a culture will develop that that people understand to do I statements and speak from their own experience.
Our group, Citizens for Justice in Michigan, actually started, about 8 years ago. Not the local group that I'm doing, but the Michigan group started with Francie Giordano, and she did a really good job in getting people to come. She was outspoken. Her son was on the registry. She got newspaper articles and TV articles and stuff, so it did get a lot of press, but we never did have a problem with anybody trying to disrupt the meetings. But we had to drive a long way to get there, and she was such a nice person that the meetings would go on and on for maybe 4 hours, and there were people that would monopolize the conversation, and we would drive more than 50 miles to get there, and I felt like I wasn't being heard enough. So that was a problem, was how do you control so everyone gets a chance to speak? And when we started our local group, which is just a branch of this other group in Ann Arbor, I had some training in peacemaking circles, which this book talks about, and you use a talking piece. And that's really good for controlling people that want to speak too much and people that are afraid to speak, because you can only speak when you're holding the talking piece, and the talking piece gets passed around. So people that you don't have to talk when you have the talking piece, you can just pass it. But if you're shy, when you're holding that, you feel empowered and you're going to be more willing to say something. And the person who has, well, if the person who wants to talk more doesn't have talking piece, they have to wait until it's their turn. And then even when they have it as facilitator, you can, I guess maybe I'm not as nice as Francie. I will shut people down. One other thing I wanted to say, which I don't have an answer to, this is a problem, and maybe later when we have questions from the audience, maybe someone has some suggestions, but Jeanie and I were talking about this last night. One problem that we both experience is that sometimes people will come, they'll share, it feels like they're getting a lot out of it, they're so happy to be there, they'll thank you and whatever, and maybe they'll come 1, 2, or 3 times, and then they'll stop coming. I mean, this has happened to more than one, to several people, and we wonder why they stop coming. So if you've come to support groups and you've stopped coming, maybe you could share with us why you stopped.
Okay. I can share briefly with some of the ones because I've had that experience with the groups we've had. We haven't led any fearless groups, and I'm definitely leaning to my experts over here. But we're all new at this. We experienced some of that same thing, and one thought that we had with that issue was that people were getting a chance to tell their story, and then it was like PTSD, and they couldn't. It was too much, and they didn't want to hear anybody else's. I don't know. And another, I think, is maybe perhaps they felt they got their needs met, and so the question for us then would then become, do we want to try to encourage those people to come back, or have we served their need? And so that would be the bigger question, perhaps. Okay, let's see. We're doing okay for time. Hopefully, we'll have a few opportunities for questions from the group as well. The next one, and we kind of led into this a little bit. It can be really hard, given the situation, of course, that's bringing us all together, for people to get past their troubles and look for solutions, which is part of the focus of a fearless group. It's easy. It is very easy to devolve into bitching sessions, but that's not constructive, and it's not helping us to move forward and find ways forward. So, how do we focus on being positive and moving forward without turning into advice giving? If you've got somebody complaining, some of us are fix-it people, and it's not entirely a male trait or a female trait, but we just want to go out there and we want to fix the problem. Maybe we just end up feeling hopeless because we can't fix it, but we don't do that in these groups. So how does the tradition of using I messages and other techniques, does that help in overcoming that tendency to be negative? Alex, why don't you go first on that?
It can turn into a bitch fest, but we're trying to nip that in the bud as well by focusing on the experience, strength, and hope. And I make that very clear in the groups that we are here to share our experiences, strengths, and hopes. And that usually sets a tone for a positive sharing, and it depends on who the group leader is, and who leads the group, and what story he was bringing, or the presentation. That can set the tone for the whole group, and so. And I've had that happen where it turned into, oh, poor me, and poor this and poor that. And then I made it a point to bring the group back into the positive by sharing an experience that I had and how I handled it and what hope I had. And then that turns it around again. It sometimes can be tricky. It's just as a group leader, I think that's where the group leader comes in very importantly, to really have an ear out for that when it turns, when the atmosphere turns, when the weather's coming up, and it's not to avoid it, it's to recognize it, but then to see, well, sometimes I literally went, so what, now what?
So
what are
when-
you going to do?
no.
So it is really, what am I going to do? And I say, it's like, so I'm always asking myself, and that's what I literally shared with the group. Look, I had this problem with this, that, and at that moment, I was asking myself, how do I want to respond to that, rather than react to that? And to just become aware of what are my needs in the moment. And that gap helps to turn a knee-jerk reaction into a more productive response. So that's kind of one way of doing that.
Anybody else want to share how they've handled that?
Well, I guess as a facilitator, you often like to solve problems. I think we're one of the worst people for doing that. And by modeling appropriate behavior, I guess would be, just talking about, well, my experience was such and such. And another thing is there's certain, in the Fearless Support Packet, they have courtesies, which are kind of the rules that you're going to follow for the meeting. I think, having done restorative justice, you want to try to get everyone to buy into the rules first, or maybe, come up with the rules that they want to use as a group. And then later, if there's a variation, then you can, kind of nudge them. Oh, remember we were going to do this.
In our group, we have talked about wanting it to be a very positive, forward-thinking event. And so, as a moderator, I'm not the only one watching for that turn in the weather. There's one guy in our group who his go-to thing is talking about gratitude, and he talks about every day making a list of things that he's grateful for. And somehow, hearing somebody say that does kind of put a stop to the whining. And there's another guy who, when people start saying, "Well, I don't know about the legislature," he's just real forceful, and he'll say, "If you want to know what the legislature," he says, "just go do it." And so we have, I kind of think of it as priming the pump, but you want somebody in your group who's going to recognize that negative tone and help you pull it back. So I may be a lousy moderator, but I've got good people in the group who really help. So.
One of the things I've noticed in the past is the need to tell a story and repeat it over and over again. Mm-hmm. And that need has a tendency to turn into a more of a pity party kind of environment. So as a leader, being a strong leader, recognizing that and leading and guiding the group. But one of the things I do tell people is that, like Catherine mentioned earlier, is that while labels have power, words in general have power. And telling a story, a negative story, for therapy and on a limited basis is absolutely valid and positive. But to continue telling the story over and over again, you're hurting yourself because you're trapping yourself in that negativity. And so you need to try and get past it and figure out, okay, what's next, like Alex was saying.
Thanks. One of the things that in the groups that we had originally in Maryland, one of the rules that, and you'll actually see that in the courtesies, we had a rule that persons do not, if at all possible, name their offense, and certainly don't describe their offense in these groups. So even if it's an I message, you would not say, I did such and so, or my son did such as, whatever. Because what we point out is we're all in this together. And it doesn't matter. I mean, we're all family. We're all in it together. It doesn't matter if you were falsely accused or if you committed a heinous crime 20 years ago or, whatever it was. We're all here together, we're all dealing with the registry, and we're focusing on moving forward over the registry. So we made a big deal about that in our group. And and that was part of what we read at every meeting. And my little piece of a story that I would say that happened with us, the people helped, is that people really liked that. I saw nodding heads when I was saying it here. And we had a new person come to one of our meetings who sat down, and I'm sure out of habit because he was going to a mandatory group somewhere or AA or whatever, who sat down and said, "Hi, my name is Joe, and my offense was," and there were 5 people in the room that all went, no, we don't want to hear that. And he was like, okay, but, so it was like, we don't want to go there, you know. And the other thing that does, I think that's really huge, is that levels everyone. There's no sense of, you know, again, the person who was falsely accused or only looked at, it was like, oh, we're only a non-contact offense. Then you've got half the people in the room who did have a contact offense, and they're feeling like nobody likes me, right? You know, you're not balanced. So the other thing about trying to avoid that is that, again, you focus on the fact all of us are on the registry. Everybody who's on the registry gets treated like they're a baby raper, so we start from there and we try to find a way forward. Yeah, so that's our little tidbit. We're supposed to be done at 2:15. Is somebody right? Okay. I do have my clock up here so that I can keep an eye, but I forgot when I was supposed to quit. So we've got about 10 minutes. We did talk a little bit in talking about trouble about recruiting, ways to recruit, and how that's gone, and if anybody has any additional tips on that, on how they've recruited people.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, the sex offender registry makes it easy to recruit registrants. So I'm sure not everybody appreciates getting an unsolicited letter, but we've mailed letters out to the 500 registrants in our county, and it took more than 1 month, but we eventually got everyone. My plan, this is why I wanted to say this, my plan, it may or may not work, is now we're going into the surrounding counties and inviting them to our support group, and the hope is if we get enough people, we can get someone to start a support group in that county. And then we'll start inviting the people in the counties surrounding that. And I want these to bud off until we have support groups all over Michigan.
Yes.
But that's my plan.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah.
That's a good plan.
I want Cindy, who's didn't want to speak today. I do want to just got to give a shout out to her because, and I think Alex, you've done this a little too. What some groups have done actually is connect with state people, such as, I mean, they actually go and talk to the leaders of the registry, probation and parole, and they get those people on board with the concept of what we're doing and how it's useful to us and it's going to prevent recidivism and whatever else we can talk about. And no, we're not out there telling everybody how to screw over their probation officer. You know, we're talking about simply emotional support and empowerment. Yeah, so anyway, we try to make that conversation. Cindy's done really great work just recently. She's getting ready to launch some groups. She's got 3 groups about to go, and she spent a good bit of time talking with those folks, getting them on board, and they are actually distributing information to their people about the groups. I don't know if it was at registry offices or just through, I don't know, the mandatory groups or whatever it is, but right, they're willing to pass it out.
I've actually asked them, I wanted their blessing.
The blessing.
Not their, because I wanted to make sure they knew we were doing this with or without them. However, we wanted the population of offenders that are newly post-incarcerated, who really may need this the most in the beginning.
Yeah, okay.
And so we've had a discussion with them, and I don't want them promoting it because I'm scared the offender.
Yeah, okay, good point. But you did, okay, so your pathway, I'm going to make sure since you're not getting onto the feed here. So, okay, so to
I
click.
wanted
The management, just to know it was happening.
The management of probation and parole.
Yeah.
To go down to the probation officer.
Yes, who can then say it's okay.
We are allowing.
Yeah.
These people
Yeah, so-
to attend these.
Yeah, so when the
support
person who's on supervision says, I want to go attend this support group for registrants, they'll say, oh, I heard about that from my boss. So that's the more accurate. And then was that have you done that as well? No, you didn't do that. Okay, I was thinking maybe it was you. I thought there was somebody else that had had some
I
contact.
did go and talk to parole and probation in our county, and parole said they would consider letting people go on a case-by-case basis to the support group. They were somewhat favorable, but the probation, which is the less serious offenses, and they're on for a longer period of time, said no.
Yep.
I mean, they have a rule that they're not allowed to associate with any other felons.
Yeah,
So
so it's
unless
getting
they
over
say
that.
yes, theoretically they can't come.
Yeah, so
Well,
it is.
more
there
than
is a hump.
theoretically.
There is a hump for that. Yes, Cindy?
In our case, this is why you have to try, and then go back and try again. In our case, these people we met with, and now this is top down, I want it the top, trickling it down. They had a Cheshire cat grin on their faces, like, oh my gosh, we need you, thank you so much. So we had a
Yeah.
totally different experience.
Yeah, so it takes a little while. Okay, I think we are about ready, unless anybody else has any final words they want to share. Okay, then for the last little bit, just a few minutes. Lloyd, you had a question?
Yeah, an online question, is the manifesto posted anywhere online?
I did. I added it. And it's, I believe if you go to, if I remember the URL correctly, it's, if you go to RSOL, nationalrSOL.org/fearless, I think you would get to it. If anybody has a browser open, they can check me while I'm while I'm up here. And that the manifesto, I believe, is up there, and then information for contacting us to get more information and to get going.
Would you like to take it?
Yeah, that's fine. If you're close enough, we can hand a microphone. Otherwise, I was just going to repeat the question. That's fine, because these aren't going to reach around the room.
You partly answered the question I had for you, but there may be some efforts in some states to go to physically drive to another part of the state to set up a support group. Is that as feasible? Is that as doable as compared with, say, okay, we're going to start here and then have it sort of ripple out? Compare and contrast that sort of rippling out with actually going to other parts of the state and starting
one.
a support group there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I haven't really done either one. But, I'd be willing to travel to another part of the state for a while. Then in our group, we've got 7 people here from our group that started in March. What I try to do is to empower everybody so that it doesn't depend on the leader, so that they can continue without me being there, which they can do just fine. There's no problem. And it sounds like you've got a lot of people helping you too. So for a new group, they may need help for a while, but hopefully not forever.
Mm-hmm. Any other? We have one way in the back, and I'll repeat your question. So. Well, right now, chances are there isn't one. Yeah, we're totally new. And so part of what we're doing here is launching. I remember at the beginning I was saying Fearless Project. And so, yeah, the question, again, is how can you find one in your area? I think what we have up here is a fairly representative sample of the whole country right now, and these are folks who have created one on their own or at the request of somebody in their local area to get one going. What we are hoping is that we will have that kind of a trickle down. So we've got the packets. Our panelists and Cindy are ready and waiting to help a group get going. We have a packet of materials that's really quite excellent, and we're hoping that it doesn't take a lot of experience. It doesn't take a lot of time and energy. You don't have to build a website. You do have to spend some time finding people in whatever way. But maybe you already have a core of people that you talk to anyway, and you could branch out from that. But again, that website, did anybody check me? Has anybody checked me? Okay, so it is nationalrSOL.org/fearless. And you can certainly ask for information there, and we'll see what we can do. Yes, Don?
Is there an optimal group size?
Optimal group size.
Yeah, I thought about that. It's a good question. The groups that I was running, the largest one was 21 people, and the smallest one was 13 people. And I found it was easier when we're kind of like in that sweet spot of like between 15 and 17 people, not more. If it becomes too much, then either the group runs too long, and since we are doing the Fearless groups as since there's a time element to it, not everyone would then be able to speak if they want to. If the group is small, that can work too, because those small groups can be very intimate. And from my 12-step experience, and also from my therapeutic group leading experiences, is like 13, 15, that's kind of the sweet spot.
Thank you. Any other questions? We're coming into the last minute? Yes.
I don't have a question. I have a comment about getting the word out to different people.
Getting the word out.
That's my wife up there, by the way. But Nebraska's Unafraid and Fearless have a pamphlet put out.
Yeah, it's a yeah. You have a pamphlet.
And when I was just released in July, and I'm still going to therapy and seeing the probation officer, I handed pamphlets. I said, this is what I'm doing.
Yes.
And if you know of anybody in a situation like mine, please hand this pamphlet to them, or at least tell them about it.
Great.
And I do have permission to associate with other felons in that meeting.
Good. So you got permission. Yeah, so to summarize really quickly, he's suggesting that there be a pamphlet, which is a perfect lead-in. Yeah, in print.
To be handed out.
Yeah, and 1 minute. So I will wrap that up. I will say that's a perfect lead-in to say that one of the items in the packet is, in fact, a little flyer that outlines what the program is and what it is not. It has the manifesto, a few things like that. So a part of your packet already includes something. It's not a brochure, it's a flyer, it only folds once. And so you can take that, like you said, anywhere that you're going to share with others, to take it to the people that you're trying to convince about, letting your group happen and letting probation people come. All right, I think with that, I want to thank my panelists, to thank all of you guys. Yeah. And I do believe